What's the worst parenting you've seen in public? A woman smacked her child multiple times for going to pick up a McDonald's order from the counter because it wasn't their order. It got really awkward when it became clear that it was in fact their order. A little girl walking with her dad stopped to rummage through some dandelions. The dad kept walking while she yelled at him to wait. She picked a dandelion and ran over to him to give it to him. He tossed it to the side and told her to stop freaking around. 18 years old. Standing in line during the summer. Big attraction. Lots of people lined up in the bright sun. Big fountain right by the line, the outer ring of which is some kind of black stone, just sucking up light and heat. We were like 30 back, and I happened to look over at the fountain as this woman hoists her infant, unable to stand/walk under their own strength, up onto the black ring. Barefoot. Poor kid is immediately doing this hopping kind of motion trying to pull her legs up, which makes mom shake her by the arm she's being held up by. Mom doesn't look at her, because mom is trying to do something on her phone. No one is reacting. Lady seems to reach someone on the phone and becomes deeply engrossed in conversation while her kid cries in pain. I quickly walked over and put my hand on the stone and loudly, didn't mean to, was just surprised by how hot, said holy crap, it's so hot. Everyone nearby turned to look and the woman had immediately pulled her infant away from me when I yelped. I just walked back to my parents in line. Lady kind of looked back at me for a moment with this "WTF is your problem?" face before looking back at the fountain. She touched the stone and yanked her hand back fast and she turned bright red before facing forward for the rest of the time we were in line. Parents who try to continue their pre-kid party life with their babies in tow. I went to college in the archetypal college town, which means a street dedicated mostly to college bars. My friends and I would do bar crawls and would always end the night at this one pub. Anyway, on this particular occasion, it gets to be that time of night and we take our table and start talking. I'm telling a story where I happen to say the word freak. The couple next to me turns to me and angrily says, "Hey, watch your mouth lady, there's a child here." And for about 2 seconds, I felt horrible until I realized they were the ones with a 3-year-old in a college bar at 11:45 at night. My friend saw a mother sitting on their child as punishment. He didn't know for what. It was a young child, and she was pretty overweight as well. Strange things happen on public buses. I was on a train home. A mother was sitting with her son, maybe 6 to 7 years old, at the front of a nearly full silent car. He had peed his pants. For 45 minutes, we all had to witness her berating this kid and doing it very loudly, saying shit like "This is why I don't like to take anywhere with me. You're an embarrassment to me. Everyone here knows what you did. Yada yada yada." Poor kid was crying. She was fucking yelling crap like this for the whole ride. It was absolutely ridiculous. If she hadn't been yelling, no one would have known he had peed himself. I felt so freaking bad for him. Finally, a man sitting near the back of the car spoke up, said something like, "Ma'am, please stop yelling at him. You are making us all very uncomfortable." She grabbed the kid's arm and stormed off at the next stop. I really hope he's okay. I work in pharmacy and we regularly sell packs of syringes without prescriptions to people claiming to need them for a sick pet/relative/etc. Regardless of whether that's true or they're using them to shoot up drugs, our policy is to sell them for the sake of harm reduction, because we'd rather addicts use clean needles than reuse dirty ones and spread diseases. We had a lady who used to always come in with her 2 adorable little girls to buy syringes for their diabetic dog. At first she was believable. She had her shit together and her kids seemed well taken care of, but after a while it became obvious she was actually using, and her addiction was getting bad. Her kids were obviously dirty. The older one, who was maybe 6 years old, went from happy and talkative to withdrawn and sad looking, and the mom eventually stopped trying to cover up her open sores and track marks. I approached my boss with my concerns. As a mother myself, I really did not feel comfortable selling to her with her kids right there, and he basically told me to either suck it up or have one of the other techs on duty sell to her, because it's corporate policy and a $3 pack of syringes is apparently still an important profit for the company. The last time I saw her come in she had open sores on her face and track marks up both arms. The older kid had on a filthy stained dress and her hair was an unkempt rat's nest, and the baby had a bad rash on her arms and face and her shoes were obviously too small and held on with duct tape. I really wish I'd gotten her address off of her ID so I could make an anonymous call and report her to CPS so she could get some sort of help, or at least have the kids placed somewhere safe where they don't have to watch their mom shoot up. Summer whole father showed up to my work and put his 2-year-old son in a cart. He pushed this kid around for like 15 minutes or so, and the whole time the kid was screaming and yelling and throwing fits. Typical 2-year-old crap until this guy finally had it and decided to twist the cart super fast. I was horrified as his son fell out of the cart and landed directly on his head. The kid's head made this loud crack on impact, but suddenly stopped crying. A minute later the kid freaked out, completely screaming with everything he had. I had the floor manager call 911 immediately and told the man not to move his son. An off-duty firefighter ran over and started first aid. When I told everyone what I had witnessed, many of the staff working that day became teary-eyed thinking this kid has to live with such an evil bastard of a father. When the paramedics came, I pulled one of them aside and gave my statement, letting them know that they needed to call CPS. This was in Ontario. The father looked like he felt like crap, but he also looked more worried about getting in trouble than the fate of his son. That night I sat down to a scotch and wept a little for that poor toddler, and it fucking hit home pretty hard. Never saw that guy again. Never heard what happened, if anything. I mean, we hope that justice will prevail, but all you can do is make your statement and trust that something was done. It's not as bad as some of the stuff here, but my sister-in-law always threatens to leave a place unless her kid behaves. But she has never followed through on her threat once, so her kid knows nothing will happen. For example, they'll be at our house and he won't sit down to eat his supper. She tells him to sit and eat or they'll leave. She will literally say this 20 times. She leave and say, "Okay, son's name, I'm getting up and we are going." Still no reaction. Then son's name, I'm putting on my boots. Still nothing. Eventually she gives up. He doesn't eat his supper and they don't leave. This happens every time I see them. So he never behaves, and she has him going to a psychiatrist to figure out why. I'm the opposite with my kids. There are times they don't even get warnings. We were at a park to watch fireworks a few weeks ago when my 6-year-old hit me twice in the groin because she got angry at something. I packed her up in the car and went home and put her straight to bed. She missed out on the fireworks while her sister and cousins got to stay up later. Don't make threats if you are not going to follow through on them. Probably a father verbally berating his son, around 11 to 12, about asking for something. Like he would not let up about how this kid was such a selfish little bastard. His words: this kid was trailing behind him, obviously humiliated, crying while the dad just kept up telling him how awful he was. Felt bad for the kid. A few people stopped him and told him to let up, and he just got all "don't tell me how to talk to my kid" and stormed out. It was at a Kohl's in the mall, so nobody could get the information on him. It was just really sad. This takes place about 10 years ago. I was at a crowded nail salon getting my nails did. A rather large woman had a baby in a stroller. Little girl was maybe 2 years old. The fumes had to be bothering her, as it was giving my teenage self a headache. She was fussy, crying, kept throwing her sippy cup off the edge of the tray. Her mom was completely ignoring her, huffing and puffing as she'd pick up the sippy cup and drop it back on the stroller tray. At some point, the mom had had enough, and, so that she wouldn't mess up her new 3-inch acrylics, open hand whacked the baby on the top of her head. I swear, the entire salon went silent. Every single eye was on them. The little girl held her breath for what seemed like an eternity, then let out a blood-curdling scream. The mom just calmly but quickly stood up, grabbed her stuff and the stroller, and walked out without paying. Everyone seemed stunned by what just happened. I don't remember what happened after that, but it was horrifying. When I worked at a grocery store, there was a regular who would come in with her 3 kids. Usually the older kids weren't bad and rarely caused a scene, but the youngest, about 3 to 4 years old, was the worst. Every single time she would come up to check out, the youngest would start asking for candy. She would tell him no, and that he needed to eat real food first before candy was allowed. Of course, he would start wailing so loudly that the whole store could hear, and she would ignore him. This would go on for about 2 to 3 minutes, and then he would beg her for candy again. She would say no, just like she did before, but on this particular trip he actually started throwing things out of the cart. She smacked him on the hand and told him to stop behaving that way, and then he actually hit her back. She yelled at him and told him that she would spank him if he didn't calm down, and he cried some more for a few minutes. Once I was done ringing her up, I told her the total, and guess what happened? She bought the freaking candy bar and gave it to him. This one stupid guy, during Christmas season, was in the store with his 5-year-old, and they were standing next to the ornament tree, like a metal skeleton in a shape of a Christmas tree, but empty on the inside. His kid crawled under the tree and somehow ended up inside the tree. Now this tree has a green bean at the bottom, because sometimes ornaments will drop if tugged too hard or mishandled, most of which are made of glass, but when it does it'll fall into this bin. To avoid getting glass shards everywhere, we just have to sweep it up daily. So this kid is like playing in this green bean with glass shards. I only noticed because the kid picked up one of our fully glass ornaments and dropped it, breaking it immediately. I rushed over to him and asked if the kid was okay. The dad, looking at his phone the whole time, glanced up towards me and then looked at his kid and mumbled, "Don't touch anything to his kid," while I got his kid out and sternly said, "This is dangerous. Never crawl under there, okay?" And then they walked away without so much of an apology, and while his dad was still looking at his fucking phone. I never wanted to kick someone in the face so badly. My dad, who was not the most patient of people, asked me to check the batteries on a camera we had used on an outing to the zoo with my 2 little brothers as we were driving back home. He had never taught me how to operate, change film, or anything on that old camera. I accidentally popped open the film drawer. My dad lost it. He screamed, "You ruined the pictures of the boys." And he full on backfisted me while driving. I remember angrily closing the flap I had opened and fumbling around for napkins as blood poured out of my nose. My dad had finally looked at me when we pulled in home, and he looked at my bloody shirt and swollen face and said, "Sorry, I got carried away and shouldn't have done that," as we walked into the apartment. Was in a fairly nice restaurant with an adults only bar/patio in the back, on a canal. We were the only adults eating in the front part of the restaurant. Bar/patio really rolling. 30-ish couple walks in with 2 girls, ages 10 and 12. They get a table for 4 near us. Server comes in and parents say, "Here's $10. Watch our kids," while we go over the bar. They then leave the girls and go to the bar. Waiter pockets the $10 and continues his job. Kids start running all over the place and run outside onto the street. We get our food and are eating. Kids are out on the street in front of the restaurant playing. Father come back from the bar and can't find the girls. We tell him they are outside. Father starts yelling at us for letting them go outside. WTF. Then he screams for the server he tipped and the manager. Demands the manager fire the server. We are still sitting there, totally blown away. Pay our check, and as we are leaving, guys is screaming at everyone: kids, server, manager, us. I was a computer teacher at an elementary school, and I had this one kid who spent so much time in my class. I talked with the principal, his teacher, and the counselor about him. All knew he had a not so happy home life, but nothing CPS would do something about. Little guy was about 8 and just loved talking, and so long as I could see what he was doing on the computer I didn't care. Anyways, a few weeks later I see him and his dad and his dad's girlfriend at Walmart, and I start talking to him, and he just gets excited, and we talk about his interests, and his dad, who according to the teacher is a major dick, just tells the kid he can't keep bothering me. The line for the cashier was long, he didn't have anywhere to be, and then said you can ignore him if you want. He gets like this and won't shut up about that damn show. And I was just like, no, it's fine. We talk at school. I like how excited he is about coding and TV shows. His dad can't believe it and just was shocked. I was so pissed. This kid spends his whole day in his room doing nothing and not talking to his family because they can't be bothered to take an interest in his interests. Someone brought their kid along to a party. The kid had a peanut allergy, but the parent didn't think to tell anyone about it. The mother sat down and totally ignored the kid for the most part. The kid, being a kid at a mostly adults event, went around and started eating anything that was in reach. The kid eventually found the peanut butter cookies and started to go into anaphylaxis. The mother knew that her kid had an allergy to peanuts, but didn't even carry around an EpiPen. We managed to find an antihistamine pill and an asthma inhaler to alleviate the symptoms. The only thing more annoying than the mother ignoring her kid till it was too late was the childless dumbass who stood there saying we should be careful about giving the child the antihistamine and using the inhaler because it could be dangerous. Like and subscribe for more Reddit videos.